America's oldest space shuttle, Columbia, we wonder what is the future of our manned space program. That's exactly the question our Rita Braver has been looking into.
At the Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. this weekend, tourists who came to study the artifacts of history instead found themselves watching history in the making.
I have some areas that I know I certainly want to go look at. I have some debris that I'm anxious to see.
I was very saddened. It was just tragic.
I was completely shocked. It was very sad.
No one we spoke to thought the Columbia tragedy should mean an end to space exploration.
It's like saying, do you believe if a plane crashes, nobody should fly? I mean, that's kind of silly. Things happen, we'll go on, but it's just very sad, you know, in the here and now.
It's worth it in the end because you progress as a human race, so it's worth it.
Still, there is no doubt that one of the most important questions about the Columbia disaster is what its impact will be on plans to send astronauts into space in the future.
Discovery's crew returned with a...
Already, the 3 remaining shuttles have been grounded. NASA's Ron Ditmore.
We will not fly again until we have this understood.
Well, it's clearly a setback. How long we'll be grounded, how deep the debate over the future will be, I think the days to come will tell.
John Logsdon is director of George Washington University's Space Policy Institute. He says the U.S. has no real alternative to the shuttle.
In recent months, as the new NASA administrator, Sean O'Keefe, took a hard look at the program, he realized that the technology for a shuttle replacement wasn't really ready, and so there had been a decision to keep flying the shuttle maybe to 2020.
The immediate effect of the shuttle's grounding will be on the International Space Station, the floating scientific lab in the sky, co-sponsored by 16 nations. Though the Columbia's 16-day trip did not include docking with the station, most of the recent missions carried out by U.S. shuttles involved ferrying crew members and materials to the ISS.
Without the shuttle, we can't finish the space station. The shuttle is the only vehicle in the world that can carry the components up for assembly. Big power panels, in particular, were supposed to be taken up and assembled over the next year.
The Russians do have a small vehicle, the Soyuz, that can carry crew members back and forth. So the current 3-member crew that's in the space station, 2 Americans and 1 Russian, can get home. But
whether the station is mothballed for a period of weeks or months, I think that's the decision that has to be made.
A lot will depend on how long the investigation takes.
It was 32 months after the Challenger before they had the return to flight in 1988. Whether this is going to be a comparable period of time, I think, is anybody's guess.
Marcia Smith is an aerospace specialist with the Congressional Research Service. What would you expect Congress to do now in terms of its oversight?
Well, I would imagine that Congress would react much as it did after the Challenger tragedy, and it will hold hearings. It will try to find out exactly what happened, as NASA is finding out what happened.
But Congress is unlikely to call for a permanent halt to the astronaut program. One reason? Science. For example, NASA's techniques for monitoring astronauts in space have led to important breakthroughs.
Some of the technologies that are used in hospitals these days in order to monitor patients in intensive care were developed because of the space program. And there's a lot of micro-miniaturization that developed because of the space program. You had to do it for the NASA missions, and so therefore you had it available to use it for other purposes.
But some researchers fear that even a temporary halt in sending astronauts into space could be devastating.
There'll be some scientific activities which were planned for decades which will not be able to occur.
John McCool is a professor of natural sciences at Princeton's Institute for Advanced Study.
Tens of thousands of scientists and engineers working on the forefront of astronomy, eager to reveal things, to discover things about the universe that we don't know, will just have to put those hard-working activities to the side in a period of uncertainty for many months, and that may easily last years.
You know that there are some people who say the science could be done without sending humans up there. What's your response to that?
There's been an argument since the earliest days of human spaceflight that you really don't need to send people into orbit, that you can do it all with robotic spacecraft or automated experiments. But the one thing that has not been able to be duplicated so far is the human brain and the ability to discover something brand new that you didn't expect and to do something about it.
And beyond the practical benefits, advocates argue that there are other reasons to support the current space program.
I think maybe one fundamental reason is that humans don't want to stay on this planet forever. That learning to live and work near Earth is part of the long process of leaving this planet, going to explore, becoming human in different ways.
Still, John Logsdon of George Washington University says the Columbia disaster may force Americans to think once again about why we have a manned space program.
I think the result of that thinking through will be a judgment that it's worth doing, but we've kind of taken it for granted for a long time, and this is a very hard, a very tough reminder that this is a hard thing to do, a risky thing to do, and also a valuable thing to do.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
Coming up, remembering another shuttle and another Sunday morning.
It's Sunday morning on CBS, and here again is Charles Osgood.
For Americans above a certain age, the news of the end of the shuttle Columbia brings back vivid memories of that earlier shuttle calamity, the Challenger. Anthony Mason turns back the clock.
"17 years ago, to the day, our broadcast began in the same sad way.
We knew that if we never flew, we'd never crash. Something in the human spirit sent us flying. And when calamity occurs, as we knew it would, something else urges us back up there, into the sky. Something makes us go on."
February 2nd, 1986. Charles Kuralt opened Sunday morning, reporting on a tragedy in the skies.
The morning had burst apart before our eyes. What was left of the proudest moment in a good many lives was a twisting trail of smoke and some pieces falling into the sea.
The Space Shuttle Challenger had exploded on liftoff, killing the 7 brave souls aboard.
Pilot Mike Smith, followed by Krista McCall, teacher in space.
Yesterday morning, another 7 brave souls were nearing the end of their journey when they were lost.
Communications and tracking of the space shuttle was lost at 8 a.m. as it was approximately 200,000 feet above the north central Texas area.
Today is a day for mourning and remembering.
The day of the Challenger disaster, President Reagan addressed a shocked and saddened nation.
And perhaps we've forgotten the courage it took for the crew of the shuttle. But they, the Challenger 7, were aware of the dangers, but overcame them and did their jobs brilliantly.
Yesterday, President Bush carried out the same solemn duty.
My fellow Americans, this day has brought terrible news and great sadness to our country.
Historically, this past week has brought the worst news to our space program. This one calendar week now marks the dates of the only 3 missions in which our astronauts have been killed. For decades now, they have routinely slipped the surly bonds of Earth with a balletic grace that belied the challenge and the risk. Maybe it's remarkable that in 42 years of manned spaceflight, those 3 are the only missions that have ended in tragedy. Remarkable that among the hundreds of men and women who have ridden rockets past the clouds, we have lost only 17 astronauts.
Michael Smith, Dick Scobie, Judith Resnick, Ronald...
The crew of Columbia is now among that list.
Colonel Rick Husband, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Anderson, Commander Laurel Clark.
Though the names are new, our debt to them is the same.
These men and women assumed great risk in the service to all humanity.